In this proof of concept, Splunk Enterprise was installed on an Ubuntu virtual machine, and the Splunk Universal Forwarder was installed on both Ubuntu and Windows VMs. An attack emulation was conducted on the FortiGate VM in a safe and controlled environment. Installing Splunk Enterprise offline. On an internet-connected Ubuntu VM, refresh the package lists from the repositories and create a structured directory for downloading dependencies. Download and install VM tools and its dependencies. This will enable copy and pasting and dynamic resolution. Reboot the VM. Register on the Splunk website for a free trial and download Splunk Enterprise for Linux. Copy and paste the wget link in the Splunk offline directory. Download Docker Engine and its dependencies. Download NetTools. Download the latest SC4S container image from the SC4S GitHub page. Download the Splunk apps for Windows, Sysmon, FortiGate and Linux. You will need to log in using the registered credential. Copy the Splunk apps to Splunk Offline Apps directory. Verify that the apps have been copied. Compress all dependencies with sudo privileges before transferring them. This process may take some time. Change the ownership of Splunk Offline tar archive to your standard user and group. On the air-gapped VM, make a directory called Splunk Offline and extract the transferred archive. This process may take some time. Install VM tools and its dependencies. After installing VM tools, reboot the VM. Install Docker and its dependencies. Verify installation. Start the Docker service. Add your user to the Docker group. Reload the group membership. Check if you can run Docker commands without sudo. Install NetTools and verify installation. Edit the system control config file. Set the host OS kernel to match the default receiver buffer of SC4S, which is set to 16 MB. Apply to the kernel by running the following command. Ensure the kernel is not dropping packets. Extract the Splunk Offline tar archive to the opt directory. Create user Splunk and change ownership of the opt Splunk directory to the Splunk user. Enter password and user information for the Splunk user. Make the Splunk user the owner of the opt Splunk directory. Switch to Splunk user and start Splunk Enterprise. When prompted, create admin credentials. Configure Splunk to listen on port 9997. Navigate to HTTP IP address, port 8000 on a web browser. Enter Splunk admin credentials. Verify that you can navigate the Splunk web interface. To configure and enable Firewall, run the following command as a standard user. In this lab, however, we will disable the Firewall. Configuring FortiGate. Navigate to FortiGate web interface and log in using admin credentials. Configure port 1 as WAN interface and port 2 as LAN interface. Create a firewall policy to allow traffic from LAN to WAN. The command line interface can be accessed through the web interface. The CLI can also be accessed through the VM. Run the following command to configure Syslog server settings. Configure log memory filter by running the following commands. Configure global system settings. Enable logging for neighbor events. Ingesting FortiGate logs through SC4S. On the Splunk VM, as the Splunk user, create the default indexes that are used by SC4S. Restart Splunk Enterprise as the Splunk user. On the Splunk web interface, navigate to Settings, then Indexes. Verify that the SC4S default indexes have been created. Use the filter search bar to find indexes if needed. Navigate to Settings, Data Inputs, HTTP Event Collector, Global Settings. Select Enabled for all tokens. Set main as the default index. Uncheck Enable SSL. Click Save. Click New Token, name it SC4S Token, and click Next. Leave selected allowed indexes blank. Select main as the default index. Click Review, then Submit. You can find your token value under Settings, Data Inputs, HTTP Event Collector. Use Docker to load the SC4S container image. Use the container ID to create a local label using Docker. Create the system unit file called SC4S service and copy and paste the following content. Check that IPv4 forwarding is enabled. In the USR, lib, sysctl.d directory, create a custom config file with a lexically later name and enable IPv4 forwarding. Repeat the process in the etc sysctl.d directory. Create a Docker volume for SC4S disk buffer and state files. Create directories to be used as a mount point for local overrides and configurations. Create the environment file and replace the HEC URL and HEC token as necessary. Enable and start SC4S. Verify it is active and running. Check Docker logs for errors. Search on Splunk for successful installation of SC4S. Send sample data to UDP port 514. Search in Splunk to verify successful receipt of sample data. Verify that SC4S is receiving FortiGate event and traffic logs with source SC4S. It may take some time for the logs to appear. Navigate to Manage Apps, then install from File. Upload the FortiGate app from Splunk Offline, Apps directory. Check the Upgrade box. Navigate to Settings, Data Inputs, then UDP. Click New Local UDP. For port, enter 5514. For source type, search and select FortiGate log. Click Review and Submit. Restart Splunk Enterprise as the Splunk user. Configure FortiGate to send Syslog to port 5514 by running the following command. When prompted, confirm the port number. Verify that Splunk is receiving the most recent FortiGate event and traffic logs from source UDP 5514. Installing Sysmon on Windows. Extract sysmon.zip and move Sysmon config file into the Sysmon folder. Run PowerShell as administrator and change directory to path where extracted Sysmon is located. Install Sysmon by running the following command. Verify that Sysmon is installed by checking Services and Windows Event Viewer. Go to Active Directory Users and Computers, Domain, Users. Right-click Users, select New, then User. Assign the name Splunk. Create a password. Right-click Splunk User, and select Properties, Member of, Add. Put, Event Log Readers, and click Check Names. Click Apply and OK. Open Local Group Policy Editor. Navigate to Windows Settings, Security Settings, Local Policies, User Rights Assignment. Allow log on through remote desktop services. Add user Splunk. Navigate to Computer Configuration, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, Remote Desktop Services, Remote Desktop Session Host, Connections. Allow users to connect remotely by using Remote Desktop Services, enabled. Navigate to Remote Desktop Session Host, Security. Require user authentication for remote connections by using Network Level Authentication, enabled. In Server Manager, go to Local Server. Click Enabled next to Remote Desktop. Click Select Users. Add user Splunk. Enable inbound firewall rules related to remote desktop. RDP into WS 2019 host as the Splunk user from another internal host. Run Universal Forwarder for Windows. Click Accept License and customize options. Leave path and certificate details as default. Select domain account. Put domain /Splunk. Enter password for the account. Leave everything else as default. Create credentials for the admin account. Enter IP address of deployment server and port 8089. Enter IP address of receiving indexer and port 9997. After install is complete, click Finish. Right-click on Outbound Rules and select New Rule. Select Program. For program path, browse to splunk.exe. Select Allow the connection. Check all boxes. Name the rule as Splunk Outbound. On the Splunk web interface, go to Settings, then Forwarder Management. Refresh the web interface. Verify that Windows Agent is connected. Unpack the Splunk UF-TAR archive to opt directory as a standard user. Create a user Splunk and change the ownership of opt Splunk Forwarder directory to the Splunk user. Switch to Splunk user and start Splunk UF. When prompted, create admin credentials. Run the following command to connect to the deployment server. Verify that the server's IP address in deployment client config is correct. Run the following command to add the forward server. Verify that the server's IP address in outputs config is correct. Restart Splunk UF. On the Splunk web interface, go to Settings, then Forwarder Management. Refresh the web interface. Verify that Linux agent is connected. Installing Splunk apps. Go to Apps, Manage Apps, Install App from File. Upload the add-on files for Windows, Sysmon, and Linux. Check Upgrade App. If prompted to set up the apps, click Set Up Later. On the Splunk VM, copy the newly installed apps from Apps to Deployment Apps directory. Verify that the apps are shown in the Forwarder Management Configurations page of the web interface. Creating indexes. Go to Settings, Indexes, New Index. Create WinEvent Log Index. Make the max size 1 GB. Enable reduction and put 90 days. Repeat the same process to create Sysmon log and Unix log indexes. Verify that indexes have been created and enabled. Navigate to Forwarder Management, then Group Slant Server Classes. Click New Server Class. Add a new server class called Nix. Click the Nix server class. Navigate to Agents, edit Agent Assignment. Put asterisk in Include, and filter by Linux. Click Preview and ensure you can see a tick next to the host name of the client. Click Save. Navigate to Nix Server Class Configurations, then Edit Configurations. Select the Linux app, add to Assigned Apps, then click Save. Click the Linux app, click on the toggle switch for Restart Agent. Go back to Configurations. Verify that the deployment status for Linux app shows as successful. This process may take some time, so try refreshing the page periodically. On the Splunk VM, copy app, inputs and props files from the app's default directory to the local directory. Edit inputs file to point to the Unix log as the default index, and enable monitoring of var log directory. On the Ubuntu VM, copy app, inputs and props files from the app's default directory to the local directory. Edit inputs file to point to the Unix log as the default index, and enable monitoring of var, log directory. Restart Splunk Universal Forwarder. On the Ubuntu VM, recursively change the ownership of var, log directory to Splunk user. On the Splunk Enterprise web interface, verify that data is being indexed on Unix log. Search for index equals Unix log and verify that events appear in the search results. Navigate to Forwarder Management, then group Slant Server Classes. Click New Server Class. Add a new server class called Win. Click the Win server class. Navigate to Agents, edit Agent Assignment. Put asterisk in Include, and filter by Windows. Click Preview and ensure you can see a tick next to the host name of the client. Click Save. Navigate to Win Server Class Configurations, then Edit Configurations. Select the Sysmon and Windows apps, add to Assigned Apps, then click Save. Click the Windows app, click on the toggle switch for Restart Agent. Go back to Configurations. Click the Sysmon app, click on the toggle switch for Restart Agent. Go back to Configurations. Verify that the deployment status for Windows and Sysmon apps show as successful. On the Splunk VM, copy app and inputs files from the Windows app's default directory to the local directory. Edit inputs file to point to the Win event log as the default index, and enable application, security and system logs. Change render XML to false. On the Windows VM, copy app and inputs files from the Windows app's default directory to the local directory. Open Notepad as administrator. Edit inputs file to point to the Win event log as the default index, and enable application, security and system logs. Change render XML to false. Restart Splunk Universal Forwarder on PowerShell. On the Splunk Enterprise web interface, verify that data is being indexed on Win event log. Search for index equals Win event log and verify that events appear in the search results. On the Splunk VM, copy app and inputs files from the Sysmon app's default directory to the local directory. Edit inputs file to point to the Sysmon log as the default index. On the Windows VM, copy app and inputs files from the Sysmon app's default directory to the local directory. Open Notepad as administrator. Edit inputs file to point to the Sysmon log as the default index. Restart Splunk Universal Forwarder on PowerShell. On the Splunk Enterprise web interface, verify that data is being indexed on Sysmon log. Search for the following Splunk query and verify that Sysmon events appear in the search results. Introduction to Splunk. Refer to ingesting FortiGate logs through SC4S and configure Syslog logging on FortiGate on port 514. Verify source of FortiGate traffic and event logs are SC4S. Attack simulation. Run Nmap scan against FortiGate VM's internal IP address. From the Nmap scan result, we can see that port 22 for SSH is open and belongs to FortiGate. Create a usernames text file containing default usernames for FortiGate. Create a passwords text file containing passwords. Using the usernames and passwords text file, run Hydra to perform a brute force attack on FortiGate's SSH service. To generate failed login events from multiple different hosts, SSH into the FortiGate using a valid username, but a random password. To generate login successful events, SSH into FortiGate using a valid credentials. Creating reports. On Splunk web interface, search for admin login failed events on FortiGate. Select source IP, then select top values. This will visualize data as a bar chart. Click Save As, then click Report. Set title as Security Report Failed SSH Login Attempts v2. Set content as bar chart. Click Save. Select View. Select Time Range as All Time and click Reports. Click Edit, then Edit Permissions. Select Display for App, Run as User. Assign read permissions for everyone. Click Save. Click Edit, then Edit Schedule. Check Schedule Report. Select Schedule and time range of your preference or leave as default. Click Save. Creating alerts. On Splunk web interface, search for admin login failed events on FortiGate. Click Save As, then click Alert. Set title as FortiGate Login Failures v2. Set trigger conditions to trigger alert when number of results is greater than 10. Select throttle. Set trigger actions to add to trigger alerts with high severity. Click Save. Click Permissions. Select Display for App, assign read access to everyone, and click Save. Select Edit, and edit alert. Change alert type to real-time. Suppress all fields containing field value by entering an asterisk. Click Save. Click Triggered Alerts. If you don't see your alerts, manually trigger alerts by running Hydra on Kali VM. Alerts and reports can also be viewed from Setting, Searches, Reports, and Alerts. Creating dashboards. On Splunk web interface, search for login failed events on FortiGate. From the interesting fields, select More Fields. Search for user and select user_name, then close the window. The user_name field should now appear in the selected fields. Select user_name, then top values. This will generate a visualization that is most suitable for our data. Select Bar Chart, then select Pie Chart. Click Save As, then click New Dashboard. Set dashboard title as FortiGate Logins v2. Select Classic Dashboards. Set panel title as Failed Logins by User. Click Save to Dashboard. Click View Dashboard. Go back to Search and search for FortiGate login events. In the interesting fields, select Log Description, then select Top Values by Time. This shows the login trends over time as a line chart. Select Format, then Legend. Select Legend Position as Left. This positions the legend to the left. Select General. Select Minimum or Maximum in Show Data Values. This shows data values on the peak of the graph. Click Save As, then select Existing Dashboard. Select FortiGate Logins v2. Save to Dashboard. Click View Dashboard. Click Edit on top right. Add Panel. Select New from Report. Select Security Report Failed SSH Login Attempts v2. Select Add to Dashboard. Drag and drop bar chart next to the pie chart. Edit drill down on the pie chart. Set drill down action on click to link to search. Click Apply. Save the dashboard. Since we configured link to search, clicking Admin on the pie chart will redirect you to the search and reporting page with the search query automatically populated. Cloning in Dashboard Studio. While the FortiGate Logins dashboard is open, select Clone in Dashboard Studio. Set title as FortiGate Logins v2 Dashboard Studio. Select Grid Layout. Click Convert and Save. If Save button is grayed out, toggle Add Submit button, then click Save. Click View. We have successfully cloned the dashboard in Dashboard Studio. In this proof of concept, We installed Splunk Enterprise in an air-gapped environment, configured FortiGate Syslog logging, and ingested logs using SC4S and the FortiGate app. We deployed universal forwarders, installed Splunk apps for Windows, Sysmon, and Linux, simulated attacks, and built reports, alerts, and dashboards, then cloned them in Dashboard Studio. Splunk turns raw data into actionable intelligence, empowering security teams to detect, investigate, and respond to threats with confidence. For more details, refer to the Cyber Defense Kit documentation.